Good morning and welcome to Wake Up.
You can't handle the truth. Truth.
Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
Good morning, then rises. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton.
It absolutely is time to wake up with Sonia Poulton and guests. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you had a good Easter weekend if you celebrate. I had a really interesting one. I started to look into the Bible again. I absolutely did, after a lovely viewer had sent me a beautiful copy. And I'll tell you a bit more about that later. Welcome to Wake Up, the show that knows that there wasn't a lab leak, as the White House is claiming, because how can you leak something that doesn't exist, allegedly? What's on Wake Up today? Thank you for being here, by the way. It was weird having Friday off, and I'm a bit out of sorts this morning. Bear with me. I may be all over the place, but who cares? Who cares as long as we're here, right? So what's on Wake Up today? I'm going to be joined by writer and activist Jean Hatchet, who was at the trans protest in London on Saturday, plus litigant Wayne Leighton. We've heard quite a lot about him. Thanks, Fred. We've heard quite a lot about him over the last couple of years because he had an unprecedented High Court win. In fact, when Sovereign Steve was on with us recently, he drew upon this particular court judgment. So we will be joined by Wayne, who's returning and has got some great stuff on the burner. And we'll also be joined by Kezia for Soul Connections, our spiritual journey. I think that's been very much at the forefront, hasn't it, over this weekend? I know it's a religious festivity, but I also think that it engages us spiritually as well. And I'll be looking at the Masonic meeting of minds between Carlson and McGregor. Plus, ex-cop Maggie Oliver clarifies her new project, and I'm really glad that she has. Establishment, interesting and odd Easter messages. And just as we reported 2 weeks ago, Operation Grange has been refunded by the Home Office, plus 2 women in court for stalking and charges dropped. More about that shortly. And what about this secret meeting, this Chatham House rules meeting? And I know it was all over social media last week, but I do want to comment on it, because I think it just further reinforced this whole idea of how bought and paid for social media is. And none more so, of course, than X, which is owned by Elon Musk. And our final word will be rise up. How apt is that? Rise up in a period when rising is really at the forefront. So if you celebrate, I hope you had a happy Easter. So deeply impacted in my childhood because I went to a Church of England school, and I'm not religious. And in fact, I never really considered myself religious, but I decided in my 40s to do a degree, and my major was psychology and my minor was theology. And I think I lasted 2 lectures with theology, and where it all went badly wrong was the lecturer started talking about how we were children of God. And Jesus was a child of God. And I put my hand up and said, aren't we all children of God? And the lecturer turned around to me and said, yes, but with a small c. And I thought, sod that. I am not being a small c to my creator, right? Whatever you want to call it. I don't, as people know around here, I'm not religious. I don't subscribe to kind of routine religion as such, but there are elements of different religions, and a lot of them obviously intersect and cross over. But there are elements that are beautiful and wonderful and worthy, and I definitely feel that there is a source guiding me. Definitely, I do. And anyway, there you go. So, but it was just really interesting. I really did enjoy actually this Easter weekend. And I got out this Bible that was sent to me by a wonderful viewer. Thank you so much. You're an absolute star. And I wanted to read through again this whole period because I literally hadn't refreshed my memory with it for probably decades. And I went through the whole period from the Last Supper to the crucifixion, to when Jesus was risen. And it's really interesting to read it again as an adult, because I literally don't I can't really recall necessarily reading the Bible or that part as an adult. And it's really interesting. Of course, you have to suspend disbelief, don't you? And one of the issues that I have now, that I had then, remains. And that is, I don't believe in a punishing God. I don't believe in the idea that we're all going to be kind of like whatever, smited or whatever. I don't believe that. That's not where I think my source is coming from. And so the idea that my source would put Jesus through such hell in order to soak up the sins of the earth doesn't wash with me. I can't. That is not a narrative that I can get with at all. But I do believe Jesus existed, and I believe that it's highly likely that he was just a really, really decent individual who realized that there were lots of sins in the world and realized that, there for the grace of God go I and all that kind of stuff. But I really do struggle with this whole idea that he was put through such horrendous torment, which I think was probably most kind of aptly depicted in Mel Gibson's The Passion of Christ. If anybody's ever seen that, it's devastating to watch, especially the journey when Jesus has to carry his cross. And Mel Gibson really pulled that out. And it's really, it's a hard watch. But the idea of a punishing God does not work for me. Does not work for me. There you go. It just doesn't work for me. And Ian seems to agree. How are you all? How are you all? A word to anyone joining us in the live chat. If you come here with negative or bad intent, you will be dealt with swiftly. You absolutely will. That's not the vibe I'm cultivating around here. I didn't like the chat arguments I saw on Wednesday on the last show, and I won't tolerate them. I won't. That's not what we're about. Now, of course, you can disagree and all of those things, but abuse we're not going to accept. Absolutely not. My mods are not here to take anybody else's abuse. That's not going to happen, people. You better know that around here. Did you, Teresa? Teresa bought The Passion of the Christ on YouTube a few months ago. Did you? And so anyway, lovely people. What did I want to say? Oh, Ashlyn O'Loughlin, which was part of the kind of falling out that was taking place in the chat. Now, I was contacted and told people in the chat were asking me to question Ashlyn about her conclusions on Richard D. Hall. And I didn't see those comments because after I realized that people were fighting, I was like, I can't be dealing with a fighting live chat. Well, I've got a live guest on air. I need to focus on my guest. And so I focused on my guest. And that's part of the problem. If you're going to scrap in the live chat, I'm going to miss your messages. Anyway, apparently a number of people were asking me to talk to Aisling about her conclusions on Richard D. Hall. And as I say, I didn't see them. But she has in the past, although I had actually forgotten when she was here with me, I'd actually forgotten that she'd expressed significant doubts about Richard D. Hall and the Manchester Arena story. But even if I had seen them, I might not have asked her about them. Why would I? Why would I? I've covered plenty about Richard D. Hall and the alternative Manchester narrative, including with Ian Davis and David Hughes. I am attempting to create something of a free speech platform around here as much as possible. And people are allowed to express different viewpoints, including you in the chat. Just don't be abusive. Just don't be abusive. And, even within the so-called alternative media, we don't have to be cliquey. We just don't. What Richard D. Hall has to say about Manchester Arena doesn't mean he's right or wrong. And people are allowed to disagree with him. And they're allowed to disagree with him without being labelled controlled opposition. They might just disagree with him. So I think that we've allowed all viewpoints around here, and Aisling's is another one. And talking of Aisling, she also talked about the kind of Tucker Carlson flying into Dublin to interview Conor McGregor. Dear me. I took one look at this image and I was like, these people will sell their audience anything and their audience will buy it, right? So obviously the right-wing Christian influencers, they're literally falling for anything right now. Ask Brandon Tate. Ask them. They know how gullible that movement has proven to be. Of course, it wasn't deliberately staged in a Masonic hall, they said. Of course it wasn't. That is literally a Masonic hall. And they've come up with all manner of reasons and excuses as to why this wasn't a Masonic gathering in a Masonic meeting hall. But I'm not buying it. That is just ridiculous. They literally are expecting us now to ignore the knowledge that we have gathered over a period of time. Now, if I went and had an interview in a Masonic hall, and you can see it's absolutely Masonic, it's not just even the black and white checkered floor. Behind them both, there is Masonic imagery. You can even see the thing and thistle, whatever it's called, right? And the checkered floor. It's just all of it. But there's no way that anybody could get me to record in that room. These are two people who have been hoisted onto the international stage. And there's no way that they can claim ignorance about that. It is Masonic. Of course, that is Masonic. If you actually zoom in, you can see the Masonic symbolism behind them. 100%. That is Masonic. And I don't know whether we are live streaming on Rumble or not right now. I had all manner of issues. Actually, no, there's an exclamation mark by the Rumble one. It hasn't worked. I had all manner of issues. The Rumble thing is really not straightforward. I tried to set it up shortly before the 24-hour ran out, and it said I couldn't. Then I tried to set it up on the 24-hour, and it wouldn't let me. It said that it wasn't processing correctly. And then I tried it after the 24-hour, and it said that it wouldn't let me either. So I'm going to give it another try on Wednesday, and hopefully that will give me a better shot at it all. But yeah, I'm not. Please don't insult our intelligence. Sit in the middle of a Masonic hall and claim it's not a Masonic meeting. It's a Masonic meeting. Right? One of them is a Mason, if not both of them. There's just no way that would have happened. Sorry. I'm from Dublin, not aware of any Masonic halls. That was one right there, unless that wasn't done in Dublin, but it was done in Ireland. And yesterday, of course, the royals, they were at St. George's Chapel. Andrew is firmly back in the spotlight after the recent nonsense from his main accuser, Virginia Giuffre. I think she has really benefited him. All that madness where she claimed to only have 4 days to live. She's completely discredited herself. Well, she had already with those of us who were kind of like prepared to question official narratives, but she'd completely done it this time. And I know you're comforted to know that Charles, supreme defender of the Church of England, felt the need to herald both Judaism and Islam in his Easter message for a Christian celebration. Let me see if I've got it here. Is this it? Yes. This is his Christmas message, and he talks about Jesus kneeling and washing the feet of many of those who abandoned him. And then he goes on to say the love he showed when he walked the earth reflected the Jewish ethic of caring for the stranger and those in need, a deep human instinct echoed in Islam and other religious traditions. Thing is, Charlie boy, we know that you broke your oath, right? And you completely went against being the supreme defender of the Church of England, but you can't be calling on other religions during a Christian festivity, during a Christian ceremony. He is literally, he literally is, isn't he? He's a king for all weathers, but not my king. Absolutely not my king. I'm not, as I started by saying, I'm not a Christian. I don't claim to be, but I think that was an insulting message. I really do. Just focus on what it is, Charlie boy, right? Just focus on what it is. And it's a Christian ceremony. I'm sure you've all seen these kind of Barbie doll things that they're doing on Chat GPT. And this was the one of King Charles. I thought that was quite funny, frankly. World Economic Forum, WEF, there he is, Quran. That's Charlie boy. That's Charlie boy for you, everybody. There he is. Right. Oh, and the Happy Easter message from the UK government Home Office was an egg. Here it is. Look at that. What the hell does that have to do with Christianity? And shouldn't the government at least be leading the fact that this is a Christian country? Again, you don't have to be religious, but it is a Christian country. An egg. Happy Easter from the Home Office. There you go. That's what they think of you. And that's not to say I didn't enjoy lots of chocolate this weekend. I certainly did. And as I say, I actually spent some of the weekend reminding myself the holy story, which I had grown up with in a Christian country. But an all-embracing Christian country. I'm an all-embracing kind of girl. Right. I want to welcome in, just quickly, before I bring in our first guest, and that is I'm absolutely aware of all the rumours that are taking place online regarding Keir Starmer, Jim Davison, Lord Ali. They're big rumours, and people are passing them off as if they are fact. I'm actually involved in a defamation trial. Let me tell you, repetition is no defense for defamation. So if you are repeating a claim without actually any source, good luck with that. Although I can't actually necessarily see the British Prime Minister coming after you. And it may or may not be true. It may or may not be true what they're saying, but I'm not going to repeat it because I'm not an idiot. But if I hear more, then I will let you know. I will let you know. And I just want to say, dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life in memory of Prince Rogers Nelson, who left the party. in 2016. So 9 years ago today. And of course, we covered that recently, a couple of weeks ago. I'll put a link in the description. And as many people know, I don't actually believe the official story of what happened to Prince. Rest in peace, Prince. Rest in peace, Prince. Right. I am going to bring in my first guest. Let's bring him in, because this is actually such an important story. Such an important story. Let's bring him in. There he is. Good morning, Wayne. How are you?
I'm good, Sonia. How are you?
Great to have you with us, everybody. This is Wayne Leighton. You might not have seen Wayne before. I think this is one of Wayne's first interviews, and I'm very honoured to be able to do that. And Wayne has been mentioned on our show before. Wayne has a precedent-setting High Court judgment in his favour. And Wayne, prior to you coming on today, I went back through your judgment last night, and it is a beaut to read, isn't it, in so many respects. And I think it's important just to briefly reflect on that judgment, because that's obviously what's brought you here today and where you are heading back into the High Court. So let's just talk a little bit about you. You are an activist, but you're an activist who makes sure that things get done. You're a litigant. You're a litigant in person. Sovereign Pete was on our show the other week talking about your unprecedented work. You have a case management set for the 13th of May, 2025, and you want to get as many people together to support you as possible. So let us just briefly look at that judgment from before. And it is actually, as somebody who receives quite a lot of judgments, because I'm in a High Court case, that must have been so wonderful for you to read. And I'm going to read a particular line, and that is, in conclusion, in summary, I am satisfied that the claimant, which is Wayne, has established a breach of paragraph 26 of the schedule, in that the defendants failed to provide evidence of their authority. That was an enforcement agency. You took an enforcement agency to court and you proved that they had no authority over you. That was stunning. Wayne, talk to us a little bit about that judgment.
Well, they still haven't established what authority they've got now, and that's the big issue. They're still bullying people nationwide without any authority. My biggest takeaway from that judgment is actually paragraph 4, where at the end he said this situation is ripe for reform. So the High Court actually said the whole system's ripe for reform. It's not just this enforcement agency, it's all enforcement agencies, and it's the actual procedure that leads to them doing what they're doing. So it's a major problem, but it's the whole system in general. It's not just enforcement agencies, it's the enforcement of council tax. It's just abused in many ways. Now, if you ask an enforcement agent to show their authority, they all have different answers, and this is the big discrepancy, because they don't have the authority at the moment, the source of it, to establish their authority, what they're doing. So I'll give you some examples. If you ask Dukes or Hanbury, they'll still use the council letter of authority, which you just referred to in the judgment, where they say they're not allowed to use that. If you ask Equator, they say to you they use a notice of enforcement, which again was dismissed in the court. They said that doesn't confer authority, it restricts it. Bristow and Sutter, now they're just issuing fake pieces of paper. Excel, they'll give you council extracts. Rundles, they're a joke. They say that their ID, the certified agent ID, is their authority to come into your premises. Newlands, they just give you a template. They say you're making freedom of the land claims when you're asking for their authority under their legislation. Jacobs and Ross and Roberts, who are owned by the same company, they'll use the Coffer judgment, which was somebody who took a case to the High Court. She was ill-advised with bad advice, and it was dismissed on the basis of, well, permission wasn't refused on the basis they then exhausted all remedies. But they use that as a diversion tactic. And then you've got Marston's, who they say, oh, we don't have to give you a deed of assignment, but the deed of assignment has got absolutely nothing to do with their authority to come into your premises. So people say to me, well, how are they getting away with still doing this after what the High Court said, which you just cited? And the fundamental reason is that these companies are private limited companies. They trade for profit. Yeah, that's what they do, right? And Bristow and Sutter in general, like they've got two companies, they've got Bristol and Sutton, Bristol and Sutton Limited. And last year, like, if you look at their accounts, they took £30 million off the public for what they're doing. Now, I got 4,000 compensation and 7 in costs, which for my own time. So if you think, if they've had 11,000 that they had to pay me and they're making 30 million a year, it doesn't really give them much of a deterrent factor to stop doing what they're doing. So they've just ploughed on regardless, and the situation's not changed, even though what the High Court have said. And we're seeing situations where at the moment where the clamping cars which have blue badge on. I mean, I've dealt with hundreds of cases where I've been helping people.
Let me just stop you there, because I want to come to that. I want to come to all of that, all really, really good stuff. I just want to let people know that you were actually awarded costs on this judgment, right? It was Wayne Leighton versus Bristow and Suter, which is obviously the enforcement agent, and the judge awarded you 4,000 costs, which absolutely clarified that you had won this unquestionably. And as I say, it has been used repeatedly, and so now you're back in the High Court. Right, you're going for a case management conference. So, but before we get there, let's briefly go back, right? What brought you into this arena? You were helping a friend, weren't you?
Yeah. So initially, what got me into all this, I was helping a friend, but it wasn't to do with bailiff abuse of power. It was to do with police abuse of power. And they were going to his house because there was an investigation. There was some copper wire going missing from a derelict building. And some of the people identified lived at my friend's house. So they were going to his house and they were searching for it. And they were seizing property of any value, right? And they took his dad's sentimental items in his dad, because his dad was deceased. So he was very sentimental. And, obviously I was new to all that back in 2012, but I knew there was something wrong. So I made and there was no warrants as well. That was the other suspicious thing. So I made a complaint to get his property back and to see the warrants. Now, I was expecting them actually to take the complaint seriously, and that was when I was first introduced to the world of cover-up. And so they dismissed the complaint and didn't even return his dad's sentimental items, and they didn't provide the warrants. I'm like, well, hold on a minute. If you've got nothing to hide, you would give the warrants and you would give the property back. So I've appealed to the IPCC, which has now changed its name to the IOPC, and I thought, independent organisation, get some recourse. Well, they're just as corrupt as, I can say that because I can prove the court proceedings. So, and so they didn't do their job. So I took, on behalf of my friend, the IOPC to the High Court. Now, the High Court quashed their decision as irrational, and they had to now take a new decision. And then the IOP's new decision was to order the police to hand over the warrants. Now, the police knew that they didn't have the warrants to hand over, and they didn't want to admit that. So they thought, they came up with a strategy. Well, if we get Wayne out of the way, his friend can't pursue this. So then they started targeting me. So then this became a personal thing. I was just helping a friend out at first, and then I came under attack. And at first it was more minor stuff. They'd just come to my house and try and pressurize me for a signature to close the complaint, pull me over at work, send me requisitions. And just to clarify what a requisition is, the police for minor offences can charge you and summon you to court without any authorization from the CPS or from the court. And to get around that, they don't issue you a summons, they issue a requisition, because a summons has to have a judicial function, but a requisition isn't. Now, I was getting a letter from the police about the complaint, and in the same post there was requisitions. They're basically saying, look, you're being prosecuted for continuing this complaint. So this went on for a while, and they were putting their investigation in the background while they were trying to intimidate me to stop pursuing this complaint. And this went on for a while, and then when they realized that these intimidation tactics weren't working, they stepped it up a level, and they made an undercover operation against me. And they did this to find out all my habits, to learn everything about me, find any bad habits they can to discredit me. And I won't go into how I found that out, because that'll ruin the storyline of my book that's coming out. But
we don't want to do that.
Deep. It goes really, really deep, that, and it went on for years. And, you know, to cut that very, very long story short, in 2018, 6 years after I made the complaint, so I made the complaint about that in 2012, they said, when I finally forced them to give an answer, because of the lapse of time, we've lost all the warrants. All 9 of them. Yeah. Well, there was many things were wrong because I could show from documentation there was actually 11 entries. Also, I contacted the court, and some of the dates they said the warrants were issued. They said there was no warrants for anyone issued that day. And there was multiple things, like you're supposed to keep digital records. When it's a complaint, you have to preserve the evidence. There's so many things. Right?
You've been so thorough, and that's how you've caught them, though, Wayne. That's the thing, is that in my first conversation with you, I was like, this guy is forensic. I don't know how your brain works exactly, right? But you've taught yourself, you know, all the legalities of it, and it's absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love it. You sent me 2 videos. What the police enforcement one? What do you want me to play that in regard to? Because I'll play them whenever you want to.
Yeah, well, that one, I'm just coming on to that now. So I had a deep understanding of powers of entry from that case, right? And then because of that deep understanding, when I've got Bristow and Sutter coming saying they're going to come into my property, and then challenging their authority to come into my property. And this is how, you know, it went to the High Court. They said their source of authority was the council. It proved that the council don't have that authority to authorise. And still, they still to this day have not answered the question of where did they get their source of authority from. Ooh. And so now we're in a situation where they're still doing the same. Now, this next video I'm going to show you, the one with the police, what they're doing here is they have a warrant. They're executing a warrant. It's a council tax one, right, for not turning up for a hearing for a means test for committal. And I'm just going to show you, after you've played the video, I'll just give a brief summary of it to show you some of the problems that we're facing with this. So if you could put that police one on, the one where they enter, we're going to enter by force.
Let's do it.
That's so unfortunate. Sally, we believe you are in the property. If you don't answer the door, we will get other officers to come and force entry.
But what you've got an outstanding warrant, and I know you've got issues with the courts and stuff like that.
We've explained it, yeah. It's a council tax.
Yeah,
it's not anymore, because I think, Sally, like we said to you yesterday, that you were supposed to rent.
Don't break the door in. You don't need to break the door in.
Right, Sally.
Right, just you don't need to.
Sally, look, we have been really reasonable with you. We had a right, we had a good time today.
should we? 3 of them. What does it say? I, Sally Nicholson, have mine.
Right. That would be a nightmare, obviously, to be on the receiving end of that. Talk to us, Wayne.
That's just for council tax, right? Now, they were exercising what's called a Category C warrant, right? Now, there's different rules of execution for different types of Category Cs, but the police there did not realise what type of warrant they were executing. So if the police themselves don't know the different types of warrant, how do the members of the public know what their rights are on the different types of warrant? And this is causing a big confusion and a big problem. Now, so referring to actual enforcement agents, right, they're claiming they don't need any warrants, and yet the only other mode of enforcement have been a writ or a warrant. So, for example, if you get a county court judgment, the judgment is one instrument, but then the warrant is a second instrument. Same with the High Court. High Court judgment is one instrument, the writ is another instrument. Same with the magistrates. Say a fine, that's one instrument, and then the warrant is another instrument. Well, they're saying that once a liability order is made, they don't need any more instruments. That's it. They can just come straight into your property. So what they're in essence saying is, say for example, a single mother who's, say she's got 3 children and she's not refusing to pay council tax, she just can't afford it, she's struggling, right? They're saying that in her situation, if she can't afford to pay it, then they can come straight in. But criminals who are causing harm, they get protection of a warrant. People in civil cases who are ripping people off, they get protection of a warrant. You know, well, how does that, you know, what's your source to say that people in them vulnerable situations don't get the protection? So they're manipulating it, and we're seeing so many abuses, you know, going into people's houses with no authority, clamping cars for, you know, people who need them to go to hospital, blue badge cars, and saying you need £110 to take the clamp off when you're not even allowed to put the clamp on in the first place, threatening vulnerable people. One case, there was an enforcement agent who wasn't certified, and when they were challenged, they said, oh, well, he was in the presence of someone who was certified, but on the video, he was by himself. So you've not only got them abusing powers, but you've got them lying to cover up their actions. And, you know, this isn't just one agency, it's all of them enforcing council tax. And there's fundamentally no protection at the moment. And they've not been able to answer is, where do they get their authority to come into our premises and do that? And that's one of the big questions in the new court case. There's 3 questions to answer, but that's fundamentally one of them. Now, another issue I want to touch on, which is just as important, if not more important, but it's not as common, is them sending you to prison for not paying council tax.
Right, that's the next video, right?
Yeah. Just before we get onto that, now some people think because it's civil you can't go to prison. But the right in the assumption it's civil, not paying council tax is never criminal, right? It's always a civil matter. But you can go to prison as a civil prisoner, and I've helped various people with this. Not as much as the bailiffs, I've helped hundreds of them, but with the actual committals, I've helped several people, and every case I've helped, they've not followed due process. They just don't follow it. And I'm finding cases where they're lying to people, because what the council are doing, in some cases, to get a summons for a liability order is very different to get a summons for a committal, because the summons for a liability order is done in bulk, like maybe 3,000 people at once in some cases. But a committal, it has to be individual. And what the councils are doing, they're lying to you by saying there's a committal warrant, right? And there isn't actually any committal warrant being issued. It's just a bulk liability hearing, and they're confusing the two to try scare you into paying.
Whoa!
So this is, and I can prove this. And it's not just one council. I've caught a few councils doing this, right? They lie to you because a committal warrant summons is expensive, and rather than paying it, they pretend they've had it issued. And if you ask the court, they'll have to tell you if it's a committal warrant. Not a liability order hearing, a committal hearing. So you best ask the court, has the one been issued? Because they are lying to people.
Oh my God. So, you should be, do you do courses, Wayne? This is literally course-worthy stuff. I would sign up for a course like this.
Well, you know, this
Wayne's got enough on his plate. He's dealing with the high court.
No, it's not that.
This is what I like about you, though. This is what I like about you, is you didn't immediately seek to monetize anything. You were like, I want to do the job. I just want to do the job. I don't want fame. I don't want attention. I know you haven't. That's what I like about you, mate. I like it.
Yeah,
I'm
all about remedy. I'm not trying to boast or gloat. Say, oh, look at this. I just want to make change for the good.
You do.
And so I've been so focused on targeting the people who are doing this, rather than just making videos, you know. But obviously now it's to a stage where this new case is going to fundamentally change everything if it's successful. So it's important to now get some information out there. So, you know, with that scam I was just talking about, there's one of my friends, Danny, he actually got somebody out of prison for non-payment of council tax. He did a really good job, and I'd just like to show that video for what he did for her.
Let's do it.
So
that's Carla Buckle, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Who Carla is?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, she was jailed yesterday.
Right.
For 8 weeks.
Right.
For non-payment of council tax.
Right.
By your council.
I cannot speak to you about this.
No, I'm not asking to speak to you, Dave. I'm asking to speak to the lawyers that you're speaking to.
Without authority to act from Carla, then we will not be able to speak to yourself.
Well, you can't get authority from her because you put her in jail yesterday.
Yeah,
And we're going to see her in jail tomorrow to get that authority.
No, it's not a matter of speaking to lawyers. We cannot speak to you without the authority, and I'm going to end the call, I'm afraid.
You are, Dave, are you? You are you? But why is that, Dave?
Because I've explained to you already.
You have not explained anything. What is the name of the person I need to speak to?
You spoke to somebody earlier.
I spoke to Dave, who put the phone down on me. Yeah, because I was asking him questions he didn't want to answer. But he's obliged to because he's a public servant. It's amazing, isn't it? So we're talking to the council tax department and they say, oh, you can't speak to any lawyers because they're not involved with this.
Well, that's right.
Well, that's wrong. It may be right, but that's wrong. This woman is in jail.
Is this regarding Miss Buckle?
It is actually, yes. I'm trying to... I've just had the great news that the High Court have decided to release her. And that's why I'm phoning, because I wanted to let you know that some of her family and friends are coming down there now in the next hour or so that they're there for her when she gets released.
Love that line. Carla did manage to spend Christmas with her grandchildren. We need more characters like you, like your mate. As people are saying in the comments right now, we've got too many Daves, right? And they prop up the system. They act as a buffer to the system while continuing to frustrate us all. But your mate did a brilliant job with Carla. Talk to
Danny,
us, Wayne.
Amazing, Danny. Yeah,
Danny. All props to Danny.
Yeah, amazing guy. So the cases I've been in with committals, they've not gone to prison because the procedure's not been followed. And again, it wasn't in her case, but she'd already gone to prison before Danny got involved, and that's why he got her out. But it's really quite controversial that the councils are trying to send their constituents to prison when we've got the Labour government who are releasing criminals from prison early because they're overcrowded.
Right.
It's like, you know, it's a real contradiction there how they're using the system. And so now we're going to get onto the new court case, because this attempts to resolve multiple issues that is going on with this abuse.
Everybody, can you see how Wayne works? Isn't he fabulous? We love you, Wayne. You're brilliant.
Oh,
Absolutely brilliant. Take us to the implications of this new court case.
So there's three main issues to be decided. I first sent a pre-action protocol to the Lord Chancellor, who's responsible for the Ministry of Justice, and she never replied. Well, she did reply, but she treated it as a constituency request, which, first of all, it was a letter before claim. It was clearly identified as that with all the legal challenges. So there's no way she could think I was asking her for help as a constituent. And second of all, I'm not even a constituent. So why would she treat it as a constituent request when I'm not a constituent? Yeah. So she effectively ignored the pre-action protocol when she has a duty to respond to it. So then I issued proceedings. The Ministry of Justice failed to supply acknowledgement of service in time. Now, that means at this current moment in time, they don't have a defence.
Wow.
Now, they've applied for an extension of time. It's not been granted yet, so the High Court, they have a discretion to do what they want. It's not to do what they want, but what they think is in the interest of justice. So they can grant them the extension of time. It's not been granted yet, but it can be. And so at the moment, they don't have a defence. So when they did file their acknowledgement of service, this is what they said. And I'm just going to read it out because this is important to listen to, because normally a government will deny things black and blue. They'll say it's hopeless. It's got no merit. It's not arguable. All these sort of terminologies. But this is what they said. The defendant is content for the claim to proceed as a test case, provided all views can be effectively ventilated before the court. The defendant considers there is a public interest in resolving these issues raised by the claimant. Ever since the decision in Leighton versus Bristow and Sutter, there has been uncertainty as to what constitutes authority. In such circumstances, the defendant considers there is public interest in resolving these issues, and the case presents a valuable opportunity to provide authoritative guidance to other individuals in the positions of the claimants, as well as local councils and enforcement agencies. In particular, deciding these issues will help each of the foregoing groups understand their rights and obligations. So what they've admitted is that not only is this case of public interest, but that it creates a valuable opportunity for people to know their rights and for the councils and the enforcement agencies to know their obligations. So this is affecting many different, not
Absolutely.
just people across
Huge.
the country.
Yeah. This,
So yes,
I mean, it's the biggest test case of its kind, isn't it? Because what you're doing is you are testing the lawfulness of enforcement of council tax, right? And so, as you say, you're seeking to clarify 3 issues. So, what are those 3 issues that you're seeking to clarify?
Well, just before I go to the 3 issues, can I just elaborate on what I said?
Of course you can, Wayne. Absolutely, go for it.
I think this is a very important point. So, if the first part of what I just read out, they said that they wanted other views to be ventilated before the court. And what they mean in simple lay terms by that is they want help. They want other government departments to join them as a defendant, right? So what they did, the Ministry of Justice, they contacted 6 other government departments and organisations, and they asked them to join them as a defendant against me, right? So they wanted other people to help them. So the bodies they asked, they sent an invitation to us: the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, the Institute of Revenue and Ratings, the Local Government Association, the Civil Enforcement Association, the Enforcement Conduct Board, and the High Court Enforcement Officers Association.
Wow.
So they asked all these 6 different departments to join them as a defendant, and every one of them declined the invitation. So they're now left to fight this by themselves. Now, what I did last week was I also sent an invitation to the Ministry of Housing and Communities and Local Government to be a defendant, because some of the ways they've pleaded their defence have given me good grounds to say that now they need to come in on it. But they declined my invitation. Well, they didn't respond to my invitation, should I say. So I made an application under CPR 19 to make them a defendant without their consent. That's going to be decided by the High Court. They can refuse it, they can accept it, but the High Court will look at it. Look, the defendant and the claimant are both saying that this government department should join as the defendant. So it's likely there will become a defendant. There might not. Again, it's discretion of the High Court, but both me and the Ministry of Justice have invited them. Just because they've refused the invitation doesn't mean that they shouldn't join. So that's for the High Court to decide. So
I love this. You're holding them bang to rights. I mean, what you're doing is you are forcing them into a corner where they are failing to come out fighting. But also, this also to a degree implicates, for want of a better description, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, because she's the housing minister, right?
Well, yes, and you've made a very good point there, and that actually what you said there, that's direct links to what I'm going to come on to next, because the Ministry of Justice they've made 2 applications. I've said one about an extension of time, which I'll come back to in a minute, but the other application they've made is to change their name. So they want to change their name from the Ministry of Justice to the Secretary of State for Justice, right? Which the Secretary of State is she's the top leader for the Ministry of Justice, but they don't want the department because it's damaging to reputation. The Secretary of State comes and goes. The Ministry of Justice is always the same. But what is interesting is when the Ministry of Justice sent an invitation to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, they didn't address it to the Secretary of State for the Ministry of Housing and Communities and Local Government, which you said is Angela. They addressed it to the department. So that's interesting, is that they're saying their name of the government department should change to the name of the minister, but their invitation wasn't to the minister, it was to the name of the government department.
They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing.
It's very interesting.
You caught them on the back foot. You've
So
got on the back
that
foot, Wayne. This is the problem. Nobody does what you do generally, right? You've taken it this far. And that's the thing, is that they don't actually know how to come out fighting with you. They're like, okay, we'll get it changed from the name of the department, and we'll do it as Secretary of State, because obviously we don't want to have a bad reputation for this department. Ministry of Justice is already in trouble, people. I'm here to tell you. So Wayne, go on, carry on with us. Talk to us more.
Yeah, so just I'll when I finish on the 3 points, I just say to the on the 13th. So there's 3 applications for them to decide. One is obviously my application to make the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government an extra defendant. The second is they're trying to change the name from the Ministry of Justice to the Secretary of State for Justice. Now the third one, this is the really interesting one. They've applied for an extension of time, right? So they've got no justification for the delay. Now, like I say, it's the court's discretion if they want to grant an extension of time, but they have to look at the reasons, and they've got no justifiable reasons for the delay. So that needs to be taken into consideration, that they have no excuse for the delay. Secondly, they never replied to the pre-action protocol, so they've had a long time to think of a defence. So they couldn't even comply with the acknowledgement of service, let alone the pre-action protocol. And thirdly is their defence for what they're saying is the source of authority, not the evidence, that the source of authority to come into your property and take your goods. I can show, like, not like 80%, like 100%, that is a false justification. It's not a source of authority. Now, I'm not saying they've lied with it. What I think's happened, in my genuine belief, is that the barrister's been misled by the enforcement agencies, because she's not specialist in this area. She is in human rights, but not in this particular niche of enforcement of council tax. So she's taken the enforcement agent's word and used this, and I can categorically show that defence is not a source in law to enter our properties. So the High Court now need to decide whether they grant them an extension of time when they haven't got a justification for the delay. They never replied to the pre-action protocol, and the defence actually is erroneous. So how they deal with that is going to be very interesting. So the 3 main points that this case is all about is, the first one we've discussed is, what is the source of authority to come into our premises and take our goods? That's the first question. The second is, what are the limits of the council's powers of delegation? Because this situation with the enforcement of council tax, it's not just the council enforcing it. They delegate their powers, and you can't just delegate willy-nilly. Not like handing lollipops out here, there, and everywhere. You've got to actually do it within their limits. And my case is they're not delegating it lawfully. So the second question is, what are the limits of local authorities' powers? And the third one is, it's questioning the lawfulness of council tax and administration enforcement regulations, the actual lawfulness of it, because my claim is it's not compatible with the European Convention to Human Rights because of the way it's been enforced. Not that they can't make it lawful, they can if they do it properly, but the way that it's administered is incompatible with the Human Convention to Court of Human Rights. So that I'm arguing that the actual regulations are unlawful themselves. So they're the 3 main issues that the court needs to determine.
Brilliant. I mean, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we want to hear, because we often hear, don't we? We're all frustrated. We're angry. We feel that we're being taken for a ride, but you're actually doing something about it. So let us be clear here, because our time, unfortunately, has come to an end today, and you've been a brilliant guest. Absolutely brilliant. But let us be clear here. Your next hearing is in London's High Court on the 13th of May, obviously this year, 2025. Where can people follow what you're doing, Wayne? Because you want people there. It's an open court, right? And you want people there to support you. Where can people follow what you're doing?
Well, what I've done is I thought about how to get this across most effectively, because I was going to give you an email, but it's getting very difficult if I get loads of requests. So what I've done is this weekend I set up a Facebook group. So if anybody's interested in helping support to stop this abusive process and get behind what's going on, the group's called Stop the Abuse. It's a brand new group. There's no one in it yet. I've only just set it up. But if you join that group, you can help join the cause, support it. You can even ventilate your views and help express what's happened to you. You get the updates of all what's going on. So if you join the group called Stop the Abuse, you can get up-to-date information.
Please will you email me a link so I can put it in the description? That will just make it much easier for everybody. Wayne, you are a people's hero. I am absolutely honoured to have had you on the show today. Thank you so much for just being so prepared to do this. You're literally doing God's work here, and I absolutely love it. Everybody, this is Wayne Leighton, and he is indeed a star. Take good care of yourself, Wayne. Lovely to have you with us this morning.
Have a nice day.
Thank you so much. You too, darling.
Bye.
Take good care. Brilliant work. Brilliant work. I love people working for the people. My next guest is very much that character. Before we get to her, let me very, very briefly look at the McCann case. Although I'm just seeing that Pope Francis has died at 88. I know you've left it in the chat. Has this all been confirmed, people? I'm presuming it has. Easter Monday. The Pope has died on Easter Monday. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. Something's deeply weird about that. Stop the abuse. Easy to remember. Love you, Wayne, says Robert. Powerful stuff, says Fred. Well done. Well done, says Devon. Right. Actually, no, I'm not going to go to this story. I'm going to go to this story after my next guest. It's about the McCann case. 2 women are in court tomorrow. But I want to show you this. This is the face of defiance. And I love defiance. I think we don't have enough defiance. I think that we've been taught to comply on a constant basis. And this is my next guest. She's been with us before. Her name is Jean Hatchet, or rather that is her activism name. And if there was a face of defiance, then Jean is probably it. Here she is. Let's welcome her in. Hello, Jean. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you? Good morning.
I love this picture. I think this should be on T-shirts. I think this is absolutely wonderful. You are, of course, Jean Hatchet, as I've already said. You were on with us recently. You were talking about a campaign because you're prepared to help women all around the world. It's not just about women in the UK. And obviously, we had the ruling from the Supreme Court last week. Classic. I think we should...
And sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Right. So that obviously kicked off last week. Amazing stuff. You've been working for absolute years, really, for all together with other people in different ways to achieve that result. And on Saturday, there was a protest, a trans rights protest in London, and you were there, which is where your image of defiance is. I've got some footage as well. But Jean, tell us what happened. I saw men surrounding you. I saw police refusing to let you walk. Tell us what happened on Saturday.
Can I just clear up? We were in Sheffield, actually, which is where I live.
Oh, it was Sheffield. It wasn't London.
No, there was a big protest all over the place. So ours
yes, you were absolutely right. Sheffield, forgive me, everybody. Sheffield, right. She was in Sheffield. But they weren't letting you walk, were they? The police were like, you can't go there. And you were like, but suffragettes.
Yeah. I mean, it was the case that there were just a very few of us. We were going to have virtually no impact on such a massive crowd who were very, very angry, by the way. And I think that's what we went along. It's like you say, it was defiance. It was organised by women to object to a ruling in favour of women. And so, you know, we went along to just hold signs up in support of women. And when we got there, they were blocking the right of access to the town hall, which is, you know, a place that people were going to get married there. Everybody has the right to walk up to the doors of that building. And they were blocking it. They were pretending to be official stewards. And we said, no, actually, we're going to walk the flag up there. So it really was, you know, we weren't deliberately provoking them, but we also had the right to, you know, go where they were, because that was our right as it was theirs. So it wasn't deliberately provoking. However, as we knew, and as we do know, the violence with those men is just not even below the surface these days, is it? And we knew that that was going to escalate. And that was, you know, one of the things we did anticipate was how they will be escalating in the coming weeks, and, you know, however long they can keep this going. But those are violent men, and we've known that for many years. So, you know, they did what they do well. They attacked us within you know 30 seconds probably before they started trying to drag the flags off us. And you know, the chanting was frightening, really frightening, how quickly that crowd of 1,000, perhaps more than 1,000, was screaming for our blood. you know, and they identified me as well very quickly and started saying that's, you know, there was very much a mood of get them. And we were just 5 or 6 women.
Oh, see, this is where I think you're brave. I know you don't necessarily think that about yourself, because I think when you're on the front line, you're like, there's so much else working, isn't there, to keep you there? And I don't know about you, but I'm largely fooled by indignation, and not necessarily even just outrage, but indignation that people want to try and pull these stunts on us. But we have seen a lot of mantrams, definitely, after that ruling. Tell me about your first reaction to that ruling. Could you believe it?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic, absolutely wonderful. And like you say, so many women for so many years have worked towards that in all of their different ways, all of their different campaigning activities. So yeah, we were overjoyed. In fact, you know, we just did not know which way that was going to go, and it went the only way really that it should have gone, which is in favor of common sense and in favor of just establishing what we'd already got established.
Right.
But I mean, one of the things we are looking at now is they aren't going to accept it. These men are not going to be being told no. In law, as you know, women have told them no, but now they have been told that the law backs women. We are biological females. That's established. Our rights are established. It won't stop there. We know it. So we've still got to fight, and that's what we were aware of on Saturday. Yeah.
And it's not just men on the street or even their handmaidens, but it's also our actual government, right? Where is Keir Starmer? Why has Keir Starmer, who has previously told us that it's the law that men can be called women, right? Where is he? Are you surprised that he's not said anything? And are you equally surprised that there's a WhatsApp group where they're trying to overturn this in some way, which they won't be able to? But what are your thoughts about that?
I've stopped looking at Keir Starmer because I find the man so pointless as a leader of this country, and you know the way that he has let women down in so many ways, and so you know, even I didn't realise how bad he would be towards women. He doesn't care. I mean, I can only see it as a government of misogyny, with the women at his side are backing him up. You know, we knew this, but I can't even speak about what Labour
It's
have done.
painful, isn't it? It's actually unconscionable. I mean, you and I have been on this road for a fairly long time now, even when Jeremy Corbyn was heading it up. And I remember being involved in a Mail on Sunday article that Andrew Marr actually read out to him live on air and said, will you meet with these women? And he said yes, and then he didn't. And so we've seen literally one leader after another throw women under the bus. But it's not just women, obviously, it's children, it's, you know, lesbians and gays. There's a whole retinue of people who are impacted by the whole trans movement. And so I think it's absolutely brilliant. And, you know, as we both agree, it's taken a lot of people to actually reach this stage. I was very disappointed to see things like Harriet Harman. These people are misinterpreting the law now.
Oh, yeah. Well, they'll deliberately do that because they are afraid. They are still afraid of those violent men that we weren't afraid of. And I think that's the difference. It's like you have to get this unafraid to make sure that law is effective. And, you know, I think we will continue to face those men and to do it wherever we need to in all the different ways. And, you know, all the different campaigning activities will probably continue because this is not going to go away. And the policing was dreadful. The police are afraid. So, you know, my worry is
right.
If they are going to escalate, which they are, how are they going to be dealt with? Because the police were terrified of them. The police said to me, we cannot guarantee that you can walk through there to the building you're allowed to. And I made that point. And they eventually had to confirm, no, we don't think it will be safe for you. And I said, what do you think they will do? And they said, we don't know, but we don't think you will be safe. And bearing in mind that we'd already been punched, and I've got bruises as well. I didn't even realise. My partner was punched in the head a few times. Another woman had a sign ripped out of her hands. They were trying to get at us the whole time we were there. So it then did become a very defiant thing. It hadn't started as such, but then it did become, I'm going to walk this flag through there because I have the right to do it, because it is simply a suffragette flag against all of these hundreds of trans rights flags. I just want to walk it through, and I'm not going any other way. I'm going that way. And eventually they had to back down, which was, you know, which was a victory of sorts, because it is just a suffragette flag. They'd already stolen five of our placards and flags.
See that here's the thing is that we know it's a violent movement, right? We've been on the receiving end of it. That's why they didn't want any debate, obviously, because actually the whole argument doesn't stand up to scrutiny. So they have to use threats and violence in order to attempt to silence us. But women like Jean and I are kind of cut from the type of cloth where that doesn't work. If anything, I think that just fuels us even more, Jean, doesn't it? So let me ask. It does. It absolutely does. And you are absolutely kick-ass. I mean, I do think that you are unrelenting, and that's what we need. I mean, that is what you need, good activism, right? But let me ask you this. Obviously, all of this now revolves around the whole issue of whether men can identify as women and whether women can identify as men. And what we have is the gender recognition certificate, right, which has enabled this all along. Would you repeal it if you had an opportunity?
Absolutely. And that's, we will be working for that. And I think a number of groups have already stated that they will also be working towards repeal. It is the basis of where we've got to is that legal fiction that should not, men shouldn't be able to tell us they're women, whether they write it down on a piece of paper or they don't, or whether that is, accepted by these various institutions or not. And what we've seen is that some large groups like Unison, for example, and Refuge, the domestic violence charity, have said we will still behave as we did before this law came in. And that's the trouble. It's still going to be that these men wave that bit of paper saying they're women, and institutions are too frightened to tell them no, and too frightened to use the law that's just been guaranteed almost. So where are we going now? I mean, that I've been fighting the FA to keep women out of to keep men out of women's football, and the FA are standing strong. And so we've got to still have to take apart each one of these institutions and make them be brave. And the only way to do that en masse is repeal.
Can you just clarify for people what their position is in law? So say, for example, I go to the doctors and I don't want to be... No, I think you can do this. Do I have a right to say, no, I do not want to be either strip searched by a man if I go to the police, or I do not want to be examined by a man? I have a right to do that, don't I, according to the Equality Act?
Yes, you do. And now, obviously, they can't prevaricate about what the meaning of woman is. If you demand a woman, then you have the right to state that that's a biological female. So yes, you do have that right. My worry is that there are still so many fearful people who will not ensure you have that right. So we've still got some fights on our hands here.
We have absolutely, and not least, of course, that we have the sitting government who appear to be opposing law now, which is fairly outrageous. Last word to you, Jean. What do you want people to know about this whole thing?
The thing that we did, or whatever, just generally
whatever. Yes. The floor is yours. And I do like to, for the most part, I like my guests to have the last word and the last say on what it is that they want to be the kind of take-home message for the viewers.
I suppose for me, it's never back down. If somebody's pushing you, don't back down, push back. And I think we've still got to keep pushing back. If they're taking over our streets and they're destroying feminist statues, then we keep pushing.
Brilliant. Everybody, this is Jean Hatchet. She literally does not back down ever. I can assure you of that. Take good care of yourself. Happy Monday, Jean. Lovely to have you with us. Wonderful. Wonderful. Pleasure. Always a pleasure. She's brilliant. She's brilliant because, as I say, she's not prepared to back down. Now, so I did see that you said that Kezia, or is it Kezia didn't have the link. So I've emailed it to her, and I've also put it in the Twitter inbox. So hopefully she can get from one of those. Here she is. There she is. I can see her actually. She's smiling. I think we have to bring her in straight away. She's absolutely lovely. She's from Soul Connections. Let's welcome her in. You got the link.
Yes, I do. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. A pleasure. So I've been calling you Kezia, but is it Keziah? How do I pronounce your name?
It's Kasha.
Kasha. Kasha. Where does it originate from?
I'm Polish, and a full name is equivalent of Katrina. So
Ah,
Katarzyna, yeah.
got you. Well, lovely to have you with us. Kath, this
Thank
is
you.
at your request. Kath is one of our viewers. Of course, you have soul connections, which
Yeah.
is absolutely lovely. And I want you to start off by telling us about your own spiritual journey, because I watched some of your videos and you seem to be very in touch and very connected. And you don't seem to be affected by any embarrassment about it. Some people are, right? They're a bit like, this is what I do, but I'm a bit embarrassed because the rest of the world doesn't fully accept it, right? So talk to us about your journey. What brought you here?
Oh, well, so many things happened. We all go through our traumas and our wounds, which originate in our childhood. And I would say up to ages of 6 or 7, all those wounds are being created by, unfortunately, our parents, although they don't realize what they do. Because they have received whatever they have received from their own parents. So it kind of carries over. And so by the age of 40, I was into pieces because so many traumas have happened which shouldn't happen to any child.
Right.
But I buried it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to feel it because it would have crushed me. But it crushed anyway. So so at the age of 40, I had no option than seek my own help. And other things weren't available through, I'm not going to be calling names where from, but the obvious options, but that wasn't available, or the waiting list was extremely long and I needed help here and now. So I was looking through internet, what and how can I help myself? And eventually I have found EFT, and I have found family constellations therapy. But in between, as I was unraveling my own stories and my own traumas and my own hurt, I have discovered that I've got this gift which I never knew it's been existing, it's been in me. And so I started learning about it, learning about my own abilities, and also through sitting in the power, as of sitting with the closed eyes and connecting to the source. I have been told that I'm meant to do what I'm doing. And initially it was overwhelming and I didn't want to take that responsibility because I'm a mom of 2 and that is enough of responsibility.
Sure.
You know? But then even though it was overwhelming and it was too much at the time, with sort of weeks and months to come, I've realized I can do it because my own stories are so similar to all of the viewers and all of the clients I'm working with right now. And I understand. So I'm in this not necessarily better position, but through your own experience, you can understand the other human being. And therefore, there is my YouTube channel, Soul Connections with Kasha, where I come through and I do the readings, spiritual readings, soul readings, and I invite people to seek help. And I'm able to offer help through family constellations, whether individual session or group therapy. And that is magnificent and it is transforming and life-changing. But however, the only sort of thing which may stop you is your own fear, because you have been living for so long, thinking, oh, I've got depression, or I've got PTSD, or I'm going through all of this, and it's comfortable in this way to stay that way. I'm saying no to it because you can be better, you can feel better, and you can overcome it because I did.
So you went through what's often commonly termed as the dark night of the soul. I've been there. I've talked about it on the show before, and it can be a horrible period where you really don't understand anything and things do appear very dark. And some people confuse it with depression because it can get that dark, right? But you essentially like you were involved in a process of self-healing, which I also was, so I get that as well. But it's hard work, isn't it, when we work on healing ourselves? How far along the line do you think you've got? Because I'm not convinced that we ever completely heal ourselves, or indeed that we're supposed to. Because I think that's all part of the human experience, that we experience pain, and sometimes we have to learn to live with it. What do you think about that?
Well, I was questioning myself initially. Why me? Why all those things were happening to me? And obviously I was going through all sorts of emotions, including or starting with an anger, because why those things have happened. Now, through 4 years of being on that journey, so it is quite a short one, you know, but you can do it, you can change it. So anyway, you know, going through all of that, initially I had to separate or block my parents because I needed time. I needed time to not to be triggered, to not to hear you are unworthy, you are nobody, you are whatnot. And we all through our lifetime have heard something which was really and truly hurtful. And if you're hearing it for so long, then it becomes you. And you think you are that, whatever it is, whatever you have heard of someone. So, you know, I knew I'm not that person, but I needed not to be triggered to help myself. And through all that time, which wasn't that long, actually, it wasn't 4 years, it was shorter than that. I came to terms through family constellation therapy that I cannot blame my parents, because now I've got this understanding. They came from, you know, difficult, from their own stories.
It's a long process, isn't it, when we have to start forgiving our parents? And I think a lot of people only learn to forgive their parents when they become parents themselves and they understand the problems that are attendant with becoming a parent. Because I think a lot of the time people seem to think that their parents are almost gods and goddesses, that they don't make mistakes. And if they make mistakes, then they must be some sort of demon. But we're just humans and we are just trying to exist. One of our recent guests talked about how she'd had this vision of somebody saying to her, you know, you're doing enough. That in itself, I think, is very validating, isn't it? This whole idea, you know, because we often don't think we are. So how far along, as I say, the process do you feel healed? Is there more to heal for you?
Oh, absolutely. It is kind of endless, I think. I think you learn and heal until you die. However, on that journey, you definitely, with every session, whichever session it is, you know, something which works for me may not necessarily works for you. Whether it is a spiritual session, whether it is soul reading, there is so much healing coming and understanding, but it is not for everyone. So choose whatever is right for you. And if you are focused, if you are really willing to help yourself, it is possible. However, if you are in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on, one session is not going to be enough. With one session, you are not going to fix or heal. And is that what was my understanding and hope, to be honest? First of all, that my therapist is going to erase all of my memories, because I didn't want to know this. I didn't want to remember it. And the second of all, that maybe 4 sessions is going to be enough. But it's not. So I have had so many, 30, 50, a lot. And it feels I still need it. However, now I'm equipped in tools where I can use this to help you, whoever is in need, whoever is ready, because you need to be ready. If you are going to do it for a family member because someone is pressuring you, or gives you ultimatum, if you want change, then that's it. Not going to work. You need to really, truly need it, want it to change.
Otherwise, you're going to get that resistance, right? Because one of the things that I've heard you talk about is sometimes it's really difficult to receive the messages because you've got these blocks.
Oh, yeah.
And some people, as you say, are not ready. It's uncomfortable to hear this sort of stuff. A lot of people will dismiss it. They'll laugh at it because it almost embarrasses them in some way or another. But also because
Yeah.
we've grown up in a world that has dismissed and denied our spirituality. And so it's all part of the same thing. So talk to me about your spirits and guides.
Right.
Talk to
So
me about them.
it is quite intriguing, and for so many, you may think, oh, that's a lot of, untrue. However, when they initially communicated with me, and they still do, they said to me that while I was learning about mediumship, being psychic or trance mediumship, all those teachers were saying you need to do it certain way because that is the right way. And but the spirit communicates with you the way you are able to absorb it, and everyone has a different gift. So, we are not in school as such that you need to learn the math certain way to understand it. It's spirit, it's an energy, and it communicates with you in various different ways. And so my way is what I have been told. I need to be true to myself, and I need to be passing over informations as they are, not to try to make it all softer, to not to hurt someone. And of course, I don't do it with that intention, but sometimes truth might be, a lot to take on. But it is to show that there is something which potentially needs to be healed. But not everyone is ready to hear it. But I am so privileged and so touched that so many of you are coming to the session on Thursday morning, UK time, that you want to hear, you want to heal. And so, the way they communicate with me each time is different, and that is fantastic. That I don't need to prepare myself.
No.
I just sit down, and I'm able only to see your written word. When you communicate with your viewers as well, you see what they write. So I read the name, close off my eyes, and the message comes through. And sometimes it is touching previous lives, because maybe you need to know certain facts from the previous life, not to cut off, not to be frightened of it, but there is some deep message from the previous life, something which maybe potentially you have learned or you haven't, and therefore you need to hear about it. Quite often, certain situations from the childhood are being shown. Where is this wound? What is the root of it? What is the cause of it? And whenever I've got my own sessions on the YouTube, I only do the reading for about 5-6 minutes. So there's not enough time to heal it. But within 1-to-1 session, oh, absolutely.
Can you understand the cynicism around such things? I can. And anybody joining who doesn't know my history, my mum was a medium. Sadly, she's now passed when I was very young. But I grew up around a seance table. I was 18 when I realized that not everybody believed in spirits. It took me moving to London away from my family because I'd grown up in an environment where everybody did. So, but can you understand why there is a great deal of cynicism? Because there's so many people who have just turned this into a business and aren't actually offering anything except just words.
Well, I do understand, but then I leave that for people to deal with it. I work, I earn, and I believe in that, in an exchange. So when I give out an energy, that needs to meet with something, and thank you is not going to pay my bills.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I like that boldness, because I think it's important, you see, to be really honest about actually what makes the world tick. And we need all of those things. As you say, thank you is not going to pay my bills. That is the reality. But there's no reason why you shouldn't use your gift in order to be able to fund your living. There's no reason. We've been given that gift for a reason, right?
Absolutely, and that's why I am meeting with viewers sometimes few times a week, on the various platforms to offer my free time for everyone to know about it, how beautiful it is, how the connection comes from direct source, from the most amazing and beautiful love, which everyone talks about. We do talk about love, but have you ever really experienced it?
Right. Good question. Good question. We do talk a lot about love, don't we? And I'm not sure that it's the most loving people who talk the most about it either. That's a really good question. So how do you get through to somebody though? Because one of the things that you're really intent on doing, right, is obviously it's clear that what you create is like a therapeutic surround people, right? Because it's about healing people. It's not just about it's not just about like being in touch with your higher self or anything outer worldly. It's also about healing thyself, which is really important. And is your belief, is your understanding that we have all the tools within us to heal ourselves? We just need to access them, or how does this work exactly?
I guess it depends on the openness of every person, but I truly believe we have it all. We do have it all, but we just need the time, understanding, and readiness to source it. I do teach as well, but also I think the misconception of it is because many of the mediums and psychics and whatnot, they have been sort of taught the way of a fearful way, and also kind of old-fashioned. So we need to go up with the times, that this is a beautiful connection. It's available for everyone. Everyone can do it. And you don't need to be afraid of it. But, earlier on, we were talking about Easter, or you were mentioning, the Easter time and family time, and, things are happening around the world. And I'm coming from a Catholic background, where what I'm doing is completely not understood.
Right.
And it's not being accepted. And so many of others, do point out, but I don't care, because I truly believe I've got this connection. I understand it. It helps, it heals others. And so, people are going to be judging those on lower vibrations.
You're right.
And let it be,
Let it be, exactly. We don't have to respond to everything,
Absolutely.
do we? No, I completely agree with you. I know that you're going to be recording, I believe, with our mod, Zoe, Synchronized Soul, this week. And I think that's going out on Friday, which, of course, you'll be able to explore much more the spiritual side, because that's obviously what the Synchronized Soul podcast is about. But it's lovely meeting you. I like your vibration. Your vibration is gorgeous, really gorgeous. And you're shining. But I also, as well as hearing your Polish accent, I can also hear a Scottish accent. Yeah, it's a combination of stuff going on.
It is. I've been living in the north of Scotland for the last 20 years. So I have learned, from true Scots.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. I always say, last word to you. What do you want people to know about you?
Well, if you are ready to face the wounds, face situations which are making you uncomfortable, every Wednesday morning at 9:30, I'm holding a space for family constellation group therapy. And every Thursday, 6:00 in the evening, UK time as well. So it suits different time zones, different work schedules and things like that. You can find me through Facebook. You can find me through YouTube, and you can on my own website. You can always reach out. It's time for a healing. It's time for a change. It might be uncomfortable, because those things can be uncomfortable, but you will feel lighter. You will feel changed. So give yourself a chance.
Absolutely, give yourself a chance. Lovely talking to you, everybody. This is Soul Connections with Kasha. I think I got that right. Take good care of yourself. Have a lovely
And
Monday.
you too.
Lovely
Thank
to
you.
meet
Take
you.
care.
Take good care
Bye-bye.
of yourself. Bye-bye. Isn't she lovely? Look at that smile. That's somebody who's fairly at peace with themselves, I feel. How are you all? I didn't look at your comments. I know what you lot are like. How are you? How are you? Great guess, says Teresa. Thank you. Love that, says Patty. Do you? I'm sure there's got to be some, listen, I know what you guys are like. Yeah, listen, this Pope business, I can't get my head around it. You're welcome, Kath. Thank you for suggesting her. She's lovely. I can't get my head around this Pope business. This is literally Easter Monday. I need some time to process this, people. I need some time to process this. Thank you, Kasha, says Stella. Thank you, indeed. Right, let's look at some news that I've picked up that I wanted to talk about. First of all, I'm going to bring up this image of these two women. You may or may not know them. The top one is Julia Wandel. She is, of course, the fake Madeleine McCann. And the lady below her is Karen Sprague. Karen Sprague is somebody who's they'd come together, and both of them will be appearing in court in Leicester tomorrow. But over the weekend, Surjit Sinclair, who appears to be a representative of these two women, and certainly Julia Wandel, has said that some of the charges have been dropped, and the only ones that remain of Julia Wandel is stalking Kate and Jerry McCann. And I think this is a very interesting development. I have to be frank here, and that is when I looked at the criminal charges that had been placed on Julia Wandel, I felt that the whole involvement of Sean and Amelie, Kate and Madeleine McCann's siblings, and them involved in the criminal charge was weak. Actually, I thought that it was a different scenario with Kate and Jerry McCann, what was alleged had happened with Kate and Jerry McCann, and same with Karen Sprague. So both of them will be appearing tomorrow. So Julia Wandel is now not facing multiple charges. She's just facing charges to do with allegations of stalking Kate and Jerry McCann, as indeed is Karen Sprague. Both of them will enter a plea tomorrow of not guilty, and tomorrow a trial date will be set for both Julia and Karen. And, I think it's very interesting, very interesting. Karen Sprague is accused of turning up at Kate and Jerry McCann's Leicestershire home with co-accused Julia Wandel. And they're calling her Wandel now, just they've missed off the T. But I'm going to go back to what she was originally called. And so Karen Sprague is English woman, Julia Wandel, Polish. They've come together. Only Can's podcast covered this and more last night. And I don't know if there's a link in the description yet. Please, lovely mods, please put a link in the live chat, and I will also put that link in the description after this. And remember, we said 2 weeks ago, didn't we? 2 weeks ago, I did the live investigation, which I've already got the next investigation lined up, by the way, and it was a viewer request, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm working on it now. And so we did a live investigation into the whole Madeleine McCann thing, and it was based. The reason that I was finally kind of pushed to do it is because I'd received communication correspondence from somebody that I know, a contact in Whitehall, who said, you're not going to like this, but the Home Office has agreed to give more money to Operation Grange, and they're not making it public yet. Well, they made it public this weekend, I suppose, over Easter. They thought it would be probably quite useful. They could get lost in Easter and all that kind of stuff. And so what's happened is that the Home Office, as I correctly said, has given more money to Operation Grange, and they've given £108,000. What for? Literally, what for? It is, and we know why it exists. People keep saying to me, why does Operation Grange go on? It goes on for a multitude of reasons. And one is, while it still goes on, there's not much information that we can get about what Operation Grange entailed. And I saw some of the newspaper articles, and they were going on about how, 3 police forces are now in a kind of run against time to prove it was Christian Bruckner. I've never seen, Christian Bruckner, foul individual. This is their German patsy. But I'd never seen a situation where law enforcement are literally so keen And they've all come together. They're so keen to dump this all on one man. I suppose they think it'll all go away and tie it up neatly if they can say it is somebody who's already a predator. But it don't work like that, kids. And so obviously that £108,000, it's from their special grant, as we already talked about. But we knew, you know why? Because we're ahead of the curve. We are ahead of the curve, and legacy media are trailing behind. And not even just legacy media. You get alternative media all over it, all over the weekend. We knew 2 weeks ago. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And so protect our children. How many missing kids don't get this by the police or establishment? TD wants to know. Well, it's a good question. It's a good question. So there you go. 2 women will be in court tomorrow. Some of the charges have been dropped. I think it's now both women are kind of firmly alleged to have stalked Kate and Jerry McCann. I think that will be very interesting indeed. And I tell you what I thought else was very interesting was Maggie Oliver, ex-Greater Manchester police officer. She was an early whistleblower of the so-called grooming gang scandal. She launched her own fundraiser last week and under the banner of They Knew. And I've questioned on this show whether it would clash with the fundraiser that had already been launched by former Reform MP Rupert Lowe. And I did wonder about it. And then I saw Richard Tice of Reform trying to play Maggie Oliver against Rupert Lowe. And I thought that was really unfortunate. Anyway, Maggie has now spoken. She started off with this tweet, and then I'm going to read you some of what she said if you haven't seen it. She said, after the launch of They Knew last week, I've been contacted by many asking why we didn't just join forces with others calling for local inquiries or Rupert Lowe or a new national inquiry. So this post is an attempt to explain why that is. My ring has just caught on a cloth in front of me and I can't get my finger loose. Literally caught. Right, I've got a dangling ring on a cloth in front of me. There you go. Sorry about that, a little bit distracted there. So she did that tweet, and I thought that was very interesting because when I read through it, I looked at the Rupert Lowe fundraiser last night, 605,000. That was last night, heading towards 606,000. It's probably surpassed that this morning. They've now got a stretch target of 1 million. I told you it would not stay at the amount that they said. I've been very straightforward that the only person that I approved of so far was Raja Mia. Certainly, I don't approve of them putting MPs on a panel. And actually, if you read between the lines of what Maggie Oliver said, I don't think she's overly impressed with it either. And I'm going to tell you why I believe that. Okay, so she said, So what she does on this post, you can find it on her X account. She details her history and understanding of this whole situation, which is absolutely extensive compared to Rupert Lowe and Esther McVeigh as one example. Now, let me just be clear here. I do believe that Rupert Lowe has the best intentions for this. I think he got really frustrated in Reform. I think he wanted to do something about it. But the problem is when you don't have great understanding about a situation, you can be a bit gung-ho. And Maggie has huge understanding about this. So in the post, she details about her 20 years. She said, 20 years ago, I was sickened to see Operation Augusta closed down by those at the top of Greater Manchester Police. I'd worked on it for 18 months and we had identified 97 child abusers, 36 children being abused, yet no one was charged, right? She said in the past 13 years, she's devoted her life to exposing the truth of what she saw. She spent years educating the country in that truth. She said she worked on the dramas Three Girls, which is a fantastic drama, by the way. She worked on the documentary The Betrayed Girls. She's done hundreds of interviews, podcasts, countless, she says, countless pointless conversations with Home Secretaries, senior police and politicians. And I've talked to Maggie. She's been on my podcast before. I think she's just absolutely stunning, sterling work. And she also talks about the sheer volume of involvement she's had in inquiries, including the national one, the ICSA. And she said, all have been ignored and never actioned, a waste of my time and energy, which made me think immediately she knows that there are such limitations with Rupert Lowe's inquiry. And actually, she goes on kind of to say it if you read between the lines. And she said, why? Because they can ignore you, and they do. These local inquiries, even a public inquiry, has no power to force government to act. They are a way for survivors to be heard, but once they have been heard and their stories shared, what change happens? My experience has sadly shown me the answer to that: nothing. And so what Maggie has actually done is set up this organization, They Knew, to identify who has been involved in covering up the grooming gangs and actually seek private prosecutions for them. And I think that that is a way to do it. I do. And I get her point. The thing is, as I say, I believe that the Rupert Lowe thing is done for the best intention, but I really can't see it going anywhere because they will have no powers to compel people to give evidence. They can't be like blatantly accusing people of being groomers because then that will put them into the arena of defamation. And I'm not actually sure what the aim is, other than, like Maggie says, to get survivor stories heard, which is not there has to be a goal beyond that. And that's take nothing away from survivors. I'm a survivor myself. There has to be a goal beyond survivors being heard. Change has to occur. It absolutely does. Anyway, she just says, private inquiries can establish what did not happen. 20 years facing these horrors means I already know what happened. And of course, Rupert Lowe is seeking to find out, what happened, how it was allowed to happen. Well, Maggie is basically saying all this has already been established. And now we need to start prosecuting. So I don't know what your position is on that. And but I think it's interesting. And I did think that there would be some kind of crossover here. I really did. And not to say I told you so. But I think it's interesting. And I think that she absolutely needed to clarify that. That needed clarification, unquestionably. Okay, what to next, children? How are you? You all got today off. How are you in the comments? All roads lead to the police in every situation. Probably the most corrupt organisation in the UK, says Cavan. Change only comes when the House of Cards is brought down. I mean, the one thing they are trying to stall, more Maggie wants to push it forward. Yeah, atrocities should be uncovered and publicised. Well, the thing is that, again, I do not see how Rupert Lowe's gang inquiry can actually lead to anything other than people being heard, which there's no shame in that. People need to be heard, absolutely, unquestionably. But anyway, Em's feeling 20 inches lighter today. What happened? Oh, Mikey doesn't have days off. Got you. I got you indeed. Right. What am I on to next? Listen, I tell you what I'm going to talk about if I can find my notes, because I made some notes here. Lady Gaga, people. Lady Gaga, right? In the lead up to the Holy Week. Holy Week. Celebrated by millions of Christians all around the world in the lead up to Holy Week. They had Coachella. Coachella is essentially rich people's festival in California, right? It happens once a year over 2 weekends. Lady Gaga, major. She headlined the opening weekend. And to be clear here, I appreciate that Lady Gaga is actually musically very talented. She has a brilliant voice. She is a musician, but she's also demonic. As it was like one of the most demonic displays that I've seen in a very long time. I'm going to bring in some imagery because why ever not? Let's bring in some imagery of what I'm actually talking about here. So, Gaga, let me. Oh, here you go. This is some of the imagery. I mean, her whole performance over the 2 weekends is full of extensive satanic imagery. And let's be clear here, on Good Friday, her recent performance on Friday just gone, she did her song Judas, in which she was talking about Jesus and Mary, but not necessarily in a way that Christians could relate to. And this was really creepy, by the way, that image there of her in the white costume. She arrived kind of like on this bed. This is her lying down. Those are her outstretched hands. And she was singing. This was from the first weekend. But the 2 weekends, they kind of meld into one another because one was a continuation of the other. Look at this big monster dress that she also had, which was super, super weird. She's actually at the top of this, and underneath her are human beings. That's her at the top of it, of this monster dress. This is where she's singing about Jesus, Judas, and Mary. Really satanic imagery. I mean, I think it takes a lot of gall on Good Friday to be dressed up like this and singing about Christianity in such a kind of satanic imprinting way. So there she is. You can see, look at her hands. She does the whole Baphomet repeatedly. It was literally one of the most satanic performances I've seen in a very long time. I was actually quite shocked. And so but the festival apparently was thrown into chaos because on the second weekend on Friday, her microphone stopped working. And that was literally when she was singing about the devil and angels and her microphone stopped working. I thought that's the source intervening, saying enough of this rot. We're not having any more of this. It was actually really nasty stuff. Patty, is so in your face. I mean, this is literally it was the Holy Week and then the Holy Weekend. And she displayed all of this all the way over it. Her opening song was Bloody Mary, by the way. And the only focus for Legacy Media was what professionalism she showed when her microphone stopped working. Whereas I was like, her microphone stopped working because I think that might have been divine intervention. Let me see if I can bring up a little bit of a video to show you. Yeah, hopefully I can play this.
To the angels, drawing circles in the clouds. Keep your mind when the devil turns around. Hold me in your arms
Weird. I literally only needed to look at it to see there was something wrong with this imagery, right? I literally only needed to look at it. And I just thought that interesting. Soul Sound said that was done on purpose, a drop mute. Yes, that's interesting. And but yeah, I literally only need to look at somebody or something nowadays to kind of tell where they're coming from. And I just thought this whole imagery left me feeling like quite drained watching it. So I'm not going to subject you to it for too long. I'm really not, I promise. But I just wanted to acknowledge it because, you know, she was back absolutely in full-bodied satanic Illuminati music industry puppet mode in this most holy of weeks. And you don't have to honor it or be a Christian to know that there are people all around the world who do honor it. And it was absolutely carved out that she would do that performance in the Holy Week. And I thought that was fairly outrageous. And she had a legion of costumes and imagery that was very much satanic. Thank you, M. You're absolutely right. It is a copyright issue. And the thing is that's why I've started to just switch off adverts now, because I want to play videos more and more. Although I might have left the adverts on today, but I'll turn it off. You're absolutely right, M. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Shucks, and I never saw any of that garbage, thankfully. Brett, they're not hiding it. And no, they're not. Christine thinks it's disgusting. How do you spell Baphomet? You spell Baphomet Baphomet. That's what you do. And so there you go. There you go. Anybody seen? I want to move on to the rest of kind of like demonic, satanic Hollywood. And because one of the other things that Ashton O'Loughlin said, we were talking about, you know, that ridiculous Blue Origin PR stunt with Jeff Bezos and his partner, Lauren Sanchez and Katy Perry. The backlash, huge. But and I thought what was really interesting was this. Now, these are actually, they were fake ads. These are not legitimate ads, but people were putting up fake ads close to, let me see if I can find it, close to Amazon, which I think is really good. And I really like that very much. Let me just see if I can bring one up at least. Here you go. There she goes. There's an activist and she left that. If you can afford to send Katy Perry to space, you can afford to pay more taxes. So it's not an official legit advert, but people are literally kind of like putting them up and papering over adverts. And that was that's near an Amazon depot near St. Leonard's Hospital in London. They all worship Satan. They're all still on Katy Perry. They're not Katy Perry. They're all still on Lady Gaga. They kind of, one just goes into another, don't they? One just goes into another. But I did enjoy that. I enjoy seeing that because I think it's always good to have a pushback against it. So many conspiracy theories around it now, of course, that whole Blue Origin thing. I'm kind of like absolutely over it. I'll be frank with you. I think these people are horrible. They're horrible. They really are. And thank you to Paul Carden for sending this in. Check this out, everybody. Let me see if I can get this on. It's Chewbacca. Has anybody seen this? Chewbacca, of course, from Star Wars, the big furry costumed animal. This is an old video, but I've I don't think I've ever seen it before. Well, they played it to a friend. They said they had seen it. So you may well have seen it, but I thought I'd play it anyway, seeing as we're talking about demons. So this is Chewbacca coming on to, I think Jim will fix it. You want to check it out? Check it out.
How do you do? Shake hands with Mr. Chewbacca. Sit back up there.
Do you like it down here on Earth?
What's he saying?
He senses an evil presence.
He senses an evil presence.
Yes.
Who could that be?
Yes, indeed, Jimmy Savile. Who could the evil presence possibly have sensed? And I mean, rather, who could Chewbacca have sensed was an evil presence on that stage? And the thing is, I want to know who was inside that costume, because whoever was inside that costume knew exactly what they were doing by saying that. That's what they did. So that was interesting. Go ahead, Chewie, says Fred. Yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie, kids. Oldie but a goodie. I do like that. Let me this thing, I do just want to touch on this briefly, because I think this is a bit off, frankly. I'm sure many of you have seen it now. Have I got the headline? Because I'd like to bring up a headline and show you what I'm referring to. But it's this whole thing of Benjamin Netanyahu having this secret meeting with a number of MAGA influencers under the Chatham House rules. Now, the Chatham House rules essentially prevents you talking about what took place there. It's absolutely awful. It's a way of being sworn to secrecy. And the one that is raising the most eyebrows about this is Tim Pool. And Tim Pool, of course, is an American influencer, and he's tried to play fast and loose about this. But Netanyahu met with all of these people, and it has been absolutely acknowledged. Let me just bring this in, if I can bring in this image just to show you. Oh, what did I just click on there? Hope something else hasn't just, there we go. So this has been, I think I picked this up from a Israeli newspaper. So he literally met them in the White House, and the idea is obviously to influence them to being even more pro-Israel, as if Israel has not already got enough MAGA influences in their pocket. They have to now round up the remaining ones. And what was interesting is, like, Tim Pool, I think Tim Pool probably made his name by going on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's where he was first kind of like catapulted into any kind of fame. Anyway, Tim Pool, after had also shown some interesting bias towards Israel. As one example, he'd accused people of suffering from Israel derangement syndrome. And his tweets very pro-Israel, like a lot of the MAGA influencers. But I think we really are now seeing the level of propaganda that is involved within kind of like the whole MAGA movement. And that's not to say it's not happening in other movements. Of course it is. But the MAGA movement is slightly different, because it appears to be highly financed. They are getting busted one after another. And I've seen the continued attacks on Joe Rogan. And how interesting that Douglas Murray, who I believe actually does suffer from Palestine derangement syndrome, but Douglas Murray has, for rather too long for my liking, been considered something of an intellect. And he's only considered an intellect because he goes on shows with, you know, dumpsters like Julia Hartley-Brewer as one example, right? But when he actually is involved in a proper pushback, as he was with Joe Rogan and Ian Carroll, he can't cope. And then you can see how captured everything is, because then what happened was Douglas Murray has spent the last week going from one legacy media pal to another, big platforms, to talk about how he was treated on the Joe Rogan podcast. But I think they're going after Joe Rogan because he's not following quite to plan as the other MAGA influencers are. So I think that's interesting. But yes, Tim Pool, absolutely been outed for who he is. And I think these people should be outed. They're lying to us. They are pretending to be independent, but they're not independent at all. Peter, absolutely, rarely challenged, and it's horrendous. They just let him say. And what was funny, Peter, was when I saw the briefly part of the interview with Julia Hartley-Brewer. Julia Hartley-Brewer was saying they were moaning about Joe Rogan, saying, oh, he's only just kind of like allowing the Israeli story to be told without any pushback. But Julia Hartley-Brewer is a full-on Zionist. She allows all manner of Zionists to go on that platform, and she never does any pushback. So what are you talking about? Now, me, I don't want to do too much pushback with my guests for the reason that I believe in free speech. That's not where Hartley-Brewer is coming from, because believe me, if she has somebody on there who's pro-Palestine, she rips them a new one. So it's not at all about allowing people the right to express themselves. Not at all. It is about crafting a narrative in favor of Israel. And it just shocks me. Actually, just shocks me. I was really late coming to the whole kind of table to do with Israel and what people had told me, because I always said, I'm not sure about this. This sounds really anti-Semitic. It's not anti-Semitic to call out a government. It really isn't. That is my responsibility as a journalist. And the continued genocide over the weekend, where they are saying, oh, there was a misunderstanding. More people are killed in Gaza. But there's a misunderstanding. The Holy Weekend, for goodness sake, awful. She did, Mel. She did push the jab and Zionism. That's absolutely what she did. So anyway, all very interesting stuff. But yeah, I love seeing people busted. I love seeing wrong uns busted. That's what I love. And somebody better be joking to me, right? Benson, you're right. They're not Semites. You're absolutely right. Moving on. Somebody better be joking to me, but I've seen a headline saying that porn star Kim Kardashian is going to be taking over the role that Whitney Houston played in The Bodyguard. Now, that can't possibly be, right? This would be a level of disrespect previously unknown. Kim Kardashian is well known for having one main talent, and that is what made her famous, right? She's a porn star like the rest of her siblings. She's not an actor. She's not a singer. She has no discernible talent other than selling her body. And Whitney Houston, apart from the fact that I was a fan, Whitney Houston was a stunning talent. She not only could sing, she could act. And Kim Kardashian can do none of those things. So that to me would be such a level of disrespect. I would find it egregious, frankly, egregious. So there you go. That's what I think about that. I did say I'd mention lovely Brian Clare. Brian Clare, rest in peace, Brian. Brian Clare was a survivor of child abuse. And I met Brian Clare approximately 2012. And it was when all the stuff was kicking off to do with Savile and Tom Watson had stood up in the Houses of Parliament, 2012, 2013. And Brian Clare approached me, said, I grew up in care and I could tell you a lot of stuff about what happens on Teesside and in Newcastle and in those areas. And I was trafficked and I was shipped around, and it involved a government minister. So over a period of time, because he wouldn't tell me straight off the bat, it took quite a lot of, like, obviously the thing is people don't realize that survivors are often still broken when they're still trying to talk about the experience that brought them down in the first place. Not broken, let's just say bruised. Broken suggests to me that there's no way of coming back, whereas I think it's always possible to heal. I do. Anyway, so Brian, it took a long time, and then it evolved that he was actually talking about Leon Britton. And Leon Britton is a former Home Secretary. He worked under Margaret Thatcher, probably one of the biggest government administrations in the UK to house paedophiles and child abusers was under Margaret Thatcher, although to be fair, Keir Starmer appears to be catching up. But I took an ITN crew that I worked for ITN. I was a consulting and contributing editor about 8 years, long time. And one of my jobs was to look into establishment abuse. And so I took a ITN crew up to Newcastle from London to interview Brian. And that was the first time that I heard some of the details about his experience that he was claiming. And I'm going to trigger warning you right now. Some of it was really, really horrible. And he talked about how, as a child in care, a number of the young boys that he was with, he was young teen, 13, 14, and a number of the other boys, they were trafficked regularly to Lords and to MPs. And he said that his experience with Leon Britton was where he was essentially given something to kind of like make him hazy and daisy. This is Brian, not Leon Britton. And then he was laid down on a slab. This is when he was taken out one weekend. He was laid down on a long slab, and he was naked. And then the next thing he remembers is a man standing over him, mask covering his eyes, who then sexually assaulted him while others watched. And Brian swore up and down that that was Leon Britton. That's what Brian told me. He said that, you know, Leon Britton was in a red gown. He had a mask covering his eyes. And ITN said, this is too much for us to carry. We can't put this on air. And I said, well, what if we don't even name Leon Briggs? He was alive at the time. I said, what if we don't even name it? But actually, this guy's testimony really sounds legit. There's a number of other people that have come forward who backed him up, including social workers. I've gone into it. I've done due diligence. I really think we should put his story out there, but they didn't. And so I'm kind of telling it to you now, to remember Brian and what he went through. Leon Britton, of course, is no longer with us, so he can't sue me. But I thought that was really cowardice of ITM, because it was absolutely at the time when we were looking into the VIP scandal, and they just refused to run with it. We spent a whole day with Brian, and it was painful for him, so painful. And the only reason he did it was he trusted me. And then they dumped on both of us. So that happens, unfortunately. Rest in peace. Yes, MB, ITN covered it up. That's exactly what happened. And that's why I'm telling you that story now. Rest in peace, Brian Clare. And if I can remember any more about him over the coming days and weeks, because that often happens, I will share it with you. He was a good soul, and he meant well. He really did. And he had a difficult, working class background like many of us. And yeah. Bad stuff. They did. They covered it up. Right. Charles is not just the head of the Church of England. He also head of all the other mainstream religions. Is he, though? Is he? Now, that would be new on me. Shush purrs. Is that actually true? Because I know he's a supreme defender of the Church of England. So interesting if that is the case. And of course, you beautiful, beautiful donators, thank you so much for donating to this show, whether it's on the live chat, whether it's as a Patreon, whether it's buy me a coffee, however, whether it's just donating to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton, however you do it, I appreciate you greatly. Thank you to Helen and Peter and Carmen. I truly, truly appreciate it. And thank you for donating on here as well. And I want to end on a theme. And I think that this is an important theme. And again, going back to what I said, and that is I'm not Christian, but I really do feel this whole kind of theme of rising right now. And obviously, if Easter period can be characterized by anything, it's this whole idea of rising against great adversity. I mean, you don't get much more adversity than being sacrificed. And by the way, just to quickly, briefly go back, which I missed out saying, Lady Gaga also enacted her being sacrificed in the same way as Jesus on Good Friday, just to add to that. Milford wants to know why I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in organized religion, Milford. I don't. But I do have a source, and I believe in a higher power. And I also think that it is divisive as well, because obviously if you have Jews and Muslims and Sikhs and Christians, all very divisive. Whereas what if we all say there's just one source? That's where I'm coming from. I'm very much about embracing all people. I am not, by the way, I don't disrespect people and their religion either, though. Just because I'm not religious doesn't mean I disrespect other people and their religion. I don't. And quite clearly, I've drawn rather a lot on this Christian ceremony this weekend. And so I want to talk about rising again. And it generally means to come back to life in some way or another, or to experience some kind of resurgence, some rebirth, or some kind of renewal. Generally, rising and rising again is associated in a religious context, obviously, to do with the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which is an absolute central belief of Christianity. But rising again is also a common term that is often used kind of to denote a period of growth or revival. And that's very much where we are now. Remember, for many people, we're in April now, and for many people, that is actually the start of the year, not January, but actually April when spring comes. And that's where we are. And the whole idea of rising again always sounds kind of like Herculean, doesn't it? Like, oh, I've been up against challenges. Well, sometimes it feels like that. I've forgotten her name already. Kasha was saying earlier, I'm just terrible with names. I think there's something in my brain. I'm just terrible with names. No disrespect to the person. But I think what she was saying earlier is very true for many people, is many people experience what is commonly termed a dark night of the soul. And that is where you go through a kind of hell. And that often happens when you're experiencing spiritual enlightenment, or when you are just waking up to the world. And we talk about that a lot here, about the experience of waking up to the world and what it means and how it impacts you, and spiritual enlightenment and what happens when you're on your own and the people around you aren't on the same page and all that kind of stuff. And that all lends itself to a dark night of the soul. But also, dark night of the soul can come about as a consequence of life changes and challenges. So breakup of a relationship, grief can lead to dark night of the soul. Losing a job, losing any kind of relationship, all of those things can take you on a path, or even just becoming aware that we are surrounded by Satanists, by child abusers who are lying to us and who use legacy and mainstream media to force their propaganda on us. Any of these things can lead to an awakening. And after an awakening, because oftentimes the awakening itself can be quite depleting, you can be absolutely exhausted. Me personally, my awakening impacted me so bad that I essentially hid myself away for a year. And it was just before my daughter was born. And I think I was about 32. And I had my daughter when I was 34, and I think I was about 32. And for a whole year, I stopped answering my telephone. I literally could not receive from the outside world. I was still a journalist, but I was conducting everything from inside my house. I was barely going out, and I was just about getting by. And it was just such a dark period for me. But after it, I felt more empowered than ever. And I think that is the whole general gist about the idea of rising again. It's a natural part of life to rise and fall. Absolutely it is. What goes up must come down. These are physics, right? And vice versa. And I think it's important for us to understand that falling and rising is a natural part of life, because one of the things that I understand about strength is that a true measure of strength lies in the willingness and ability to rise again after a fall, right? Success is not just falling down. Success also involves picking yourself up after you've fallen down. But sometimes you need to fall down in order to be able to pick yourself back up. Sometimes you need to get to rock bottom before you're able to pick yourself back up again. And obviously the story of Jesus is as rock bottom as it gets. This is rock bottom as it gets. They killed him, right? They killed him, put him in a cave, and then he rose again. And I do think that in itself is a beautiful story. And I think it's really reflective of the season. And I love all of that. And, the thing is, there have been some brilliant quotes throughout the years, throughout the decades, throughout the centuries, from very wise people who have talked about the ability to rise again. And I think it was Confucius who was originally quoted as saying it. And then I think Nelson Mandela said it. But one of the, I think, great quotes is, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And I think there's some truth in that. So I want to kind of encourage you, if you're feeling down, that you will come back up again. You absolutely will. And this is absolutely the season for it. Even the weather, we're not being chemtrailed, but even the weather itself lends itself to enabling us to come out, to push back the rock from the cave, to come out into the sunshine. Although I have to say, as an aside, typical bank holiday in England, it was raining when I woke up. Rise again. And yes, Josephine, I have to say that reading the Bible again this weekend was actually really felt like quite a wholesome thing, because I was also like cross-referencing it, because I wanted to be able to understand it more than I've ever understood it before. And some of it was so deeply painful to read. But it was really interesting. And the sun rises. It does indeed, Mels. It does indeed. And so I just want to say to you, because you are indeed our kings and queens around here, and I picked the final quote to reflect that. But first of all, thank you very much to our mods for being here today. Thank you all for being here today. And I hope you are all right. I hope you enjoyed this Monday. I hope you had a good weekend. I will see you again, of course, on Wednesday. And the quote I want to end on is simple. And that is, kings and queens aren't made from smooth sailing. They fight, they struggle, they take what's theirs, they survive. And when they fall, they rise up again, as indeed do we. Rise up, people. Have a wonderful Monday and a great Tuesday. And I will see you Wednesday. Take excellent care of yourself. And thank you for being awesome, Crazy Bunny, and everybody else. Lots of love to you all. See you Wednesday. Take care.